Can we start?
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Haipei Xu, President of United Chinese Americans. Good afternoon and good morning for Professor Wong Chang in China. This is a very, very unusual event in the sense that we have gathered today amazing plate of witness and victims and members of Congress on this very, very troubling issue of China Initiative. We have just had a silent protest outside the Department of Justice. What we have been asking for is to stop the China Initiative as we know it, or at least they have to revamp it. I think because of all your efforts, especially our congressional members' multi-year efforts in this, and especially Congresswoman Chu and Congressman Liu, you two are our vanguard and our guardian angels of our civil rights. The things are turning for the better. You probably all know that even 2 days ago, Boston Globe came up with another editorial. This is right after the conviction of Professor Lieber, saying that this is the conviction. This is my view on that conviction. Actually, revealed the very weakness and the wrong practice of China Initiative, that you're set out to catch spy and to stop illegal transfer of technology or trade secret, but you ended up convicted a world-renowned professor in his terminal ills, fighting cancer, convict him with a tax evasion, basically. So that's one more time highlights the problem with China Initiative. So what we are asking our federal government is to treat Chinese American as Americans and stop profiling anything about Chinese Americans. We want nothing more, nothing less as American. And today, I think we have never had such an opportunity, have so many witnesses and victims gathered together in one spot, and so many of you dare to speak up despite of lingering fear. I have I do not need to share. I have talked with every one of you. Many of you still have a fear in your heart. This is not right. This is not what America is about. So let's start to have our member of Congress address us first. I'll introduce Congresswoman Chu from LA. Congresswoman Chu really does not need my introduction. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows her. She's the chair of CAPAC, Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. She has done amazing things over the last decade. Wow, that's fast. It's already a decade now, Congresswoman. And she has been a leading voice on this issue, on an issue about Chinese and Asian American civil rights issue. And she also have lead the effort to pass Congressional Apology Resolution for the Chinese Exclusion Act, passed in 1880. This is passed in 10 years ago. So Congressman Chu, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haipei. I'm so pleased to be joining with the United Chinese Americans for today's important press conference on the pain and harm caused by the China Initiative. I especially want to recognize the tireless work and leadership of Haipei Xu. So thank you so much. Well, since the start of 2020, there have been over 10,000 reported anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents. These attacks have been driven by xenophobic and bigoted rhetoric like the China virus and Kung flu that tell people to blame all Chinese for their problems. And that is one of many reasons why we in the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or what we call CAPAC, which I lead, have made it a priority to end the China Initiative, a Department of Justice program aimed at countering espionage in our universities, but which is really just an exercise in racial profiling. Just family ties to China can be enough to trigger an investigation and have your life and career ruined by a criminal conviction. This has real consequences for the way these investigations play out, with chilling effects for both the Chinese American community and our country as a whole. First, by looking specifically at Chinese scientists, we might be missing real instances of espionage from other countries. As former CIA Director Robert Gates said, there are probably a dozen or 15 countries that steal our technology. But only one country, China, has been deemed to require what FBI Director Christopher Wray called a whole of society response. This is the exact kind of language that leads to widespread mistrust of Chinese Americans. Second, this initiative prioritizes convictions, not justice. And that has too often meant bringing a case without sufficient grounds, something that has upended the lives of people like Dr. An Ming-hu, who was the first case to be brought under trial under the China Initiative. You will hear from Dr. Hu and his lawyer today. But what is shocking is that even after the FBI agents involved admitted under oath to knowingly building their case against him on falsified evidence, and with the case ended in a mistrial, the US government still said they intended to retry the case. Fortunately, in September, a US district judge rejected the Department of Justice's request for a retrial and completely acquitted Dr. Hu. While I'm glad that Dr. Hu has been cleared, the damage has been already done. Already his career and reputation have been harmed, just as with other scientists and researchers like Dr. Xiaoxing Shi and Sherry Chen, who suffer personal and professional harm only to have the charges dropped completely. But Dr. Hu's case echoes the situation of the dozens of other Chinese scientists accused who've been indicted mostly for paperwork errors and omissions of information and not actual economic espionage. And it's having a chilling effect on young Chinese Americans who are deciding to avoid careers in science out of fear they too may be investigated or worse. In addition to the harm it's causing in our communities, the numbers simply do not justify this program. After 3 years of investigations, over 150 defendants and at least 77 cases, the China Initiative has just secured just one single conviction in a court of law. This dismal record proves the China Initiative is flawed. The fact that the vast majority of the people investigated have been Chinese academics who've had the charges dropped without explanation shows how prioritizing investigations based on race or ethnicity perverts these investigations, leading investigators to use faulty or fabricated evidence to pursue suspects in search of crimes instead of pursuing crimes in search of suspects. Now, all of these reasons are why we in CAPAC have pushed for the China Initiative to end. There's a legitimate need for counter-espionage work in our government, but that work must be based on evidence and not race. And I'm optimistic that we can make this change because already by speaking out, we've gotten the US government to end a shadowy unit at the Department of Commerce that had been investigating without any oversight anybody that they thought could be a security risk. They were given free rein, this Investigations and Threat Management Service, or ITMS unit. They opened investigations on 2,000 employees, mostly Asian and Middle Eastern, based on their ethnicity and without their knowledge. When I heard about this unit, I immediately called for it to be disbanded. We in CAPAC then met with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, to press her on it. And thankfully, she has indeed ended this unit. But there's so much more that we need to do. We in CAPAC issued messaging guidance to every member of Congress on not using Cold War rhetoric when discussing China that would paint all Chinese people as threats and put innocent Chinese Americans at risk. We recently fought back against an amendment that a Republican Congress member wanted to put in the agriculture appropriations bill, barring all Chinese nationals from owning US agricultural land. Because of our protests, it was finally changed to barring only the Chinese companies wholly or partially owned by the government of China. However, we could not get it changed to also include Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And I ask, how could it be more acceptable for Vladimir Putin to own US agricultural land than Xi Jinping? Due to our urging, Congressmember Jamie Raskin agreed to host a very powerful House Government and Oversight Committee roundtable on this issue, in which we heard from speakers like Dr. Xiao Shengxi and former Energy Secretary Stephen Chu. Afterwards, Congress members said to me, I had no idea all this was happening to Chinese scientists and engineers. Good news, as a result of the feedback from this roundtable, that there wasn't consistency on what scientists are supposed to include on their grant applications, CAPAC sent a letter of recommendation to the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. The OSTP listened to us and just now released guidance on the federal grant application process that will create uniformity across the grant making process and specifically identified the xenophobia faced by Asian American scientists as a reason for them to issue this guidance. And in October, we met with US Attorney General Merrick Garland to press him on ending the China Initiative. While he did not take a position on the initiative itself, he did say that he had just brought in an Assistant Attorney General, Matt Olson, to do a full review of the China Initiative program and other national security cases. And in fact, we will be meeting with him soon. In response to our complaints about FBI stereotyping, Attorney General Garland also said that he reinstated the implicit bias training program with the Department of Justice, something that was dismantled during the Trump era. The most important thing we did in the meeting was for him to know that we are watching to see if the Department of Justice oversteps, and if they do, we are ready to fight back. So thank you, UCA, for being such partners in this fight. It is only with your advocacy that we will be able to ensure justice and equality for all.
Thank you, Congressman Chu. It's just amazing. We heard all this from you, some even new to me. Okay, next we will have Congressman Ted Liu. Congressman Liu is absolutely a congressional leader on the Chinese American civil rights issues. We have worked together about 6 years ago, together with the Congressman Chu and others, Mike Honda and others, starting with Sherry Chen and then Xiao Shengxi. So over the years, you can always turn to Congressman Liu for his support on these issues. And he's been using his perch at Judiciary Committee to address these legal concerns and civil rights concerns whenever he has an opportunity. And just very recently, he has issued a letter that has co-signed by over 90 members of Congress, a letter addressing the same concerns we're talking about here to Attorney General. And all this has made a difference. And as Congresswoman Chu said, that all this CAPAC's efforts, members' efforts, our media. And by the way, I just want to share one quick anecdote. We had a panel webinar on McCarthyism with the bestseller of McCarthy. And I asked the author that what did the media do during the 50s when McCarthyism was in the heydays. And he said basically media just silent or played along. And this time I do think that there's a difference over the years, ever since from Sherry Chen, that the media has played a good, healthy, analytical, independent role, not just listen to what government has put it out, and not just listen to what advocacy group like we put it out, and it came to a very, very independent analytical study and reporting that all made a difference. Congressman Liu, thank you.
Thank you, Haipei, for your leadership and your work on these issues, as well as that of UCA. All of you have been fighting the good fight, and we all are better for that. Also want to thank Congresswoman Chu for her leadership as chairwoman of CAPAC. Under her leadership, we now have the highest number of Asian Americans in U.S. Congress in history. And it's an honor to work with Congresswoman Chu in Congress. And I want to thank everyone for participating today. I think it's important to understand what is happening by looking at the history of the United States and to look at all of this in context. There has been a history of discrimination against people of Asian descent in America. We had the whole yellow peril hysteria earlier in our country's history. We had the massacre of Chinese immigrants in Los Angeles. We had the Chinese Exclusion Act. In World War II, over 100,000 Americans were interned because the government refused to distinguish between the Imperial Army of Japan and Americans who happened to be of Japanese descent. In the 1980s, Vincent Chin was brutally murdered because some Americans were fearful of the economic rise of Japan. And then during the pandemic, you had a large, massive increase in hate crimes against Americans, driven in part by the former president who used racist phrases like Kung Flu. And we also see the China Initiative that was put in by the former administration. A few years ago, I remember reading a New York Times article, and this was during the Obama administration, about a case regarding Sherry Chen and how they had arrested her, charged her with espionage type charges, embarrassed her in front of her coworkers, turn her life upside down. And then a few months later, all charges were dropped. And that seemed to me wrong. And so I started writing a letter to the Department of Justice. Before I could finish circulating that letter, I read another article, this time about Professor Shi, who was a Temple University professor, and he also was arrested, charged with espionage type charges, and then later on, all charges were dropped after his life had been turned upside down. And to me, we're no longer looking at mistakes, we're looking at a systematic problem. And so we worked with CAPAC and with Judy Chu and with civil rights groups and with UCA and others. We did press conferences, we did press releases, we did opinion pieces, we met with administration officials, and the Department of Justice made two changes, one of which was they would have another layer of review in Washington, D.C. To look at these cases, and they also agreed to order implicit bias training for FBI agents and prosecutors and law enforcement personnel. And to us, that was their admission that something else was happening during these cases. And as we looked into it, there were several other cases that had the same pattern of defendant being arrested, charged with espionage type charges, and then having all these charges drop. And the only thing similar was that the defendants all happened to look like you or me. They happened to be Asian. And so the Department of Justice recognized that problem. Unfortunately, when the former administration took over, they did not do the implicit bias training. And now under the Biden administration, very pleased that when Attorney General Garland was questioned both at the House Judiciary Oversight Committee, in which I sat, as well as with a meeting with CAPAC, he agreed to re-implement the implicit bias training at the Department of Justice. We also know that the problems that happened with cases like Sherry Chen and Professor Shi did not change, because we have now the case of Professor Hu, who also was wrongfully indicted. And in this case, the charges weren't dropped. What happened is a federal judge looked at the case after the jury did not convict and threw the case out, saying that essentially no rational jury looking at these facts, even the light most favorable to the prosecution, could conclude that Professor Hu violated any laws. And what we have here, by the way, that is such a rare thing to happen for federal prosecutors. They're conviction rate of the Department of Justice is astounding. It is on the order of 90-some% once they bring charges. So for this to happen is a large embarrassment to the department. And what it showed to me was that they were bringing this case based on Professor Hu's race. If Professor Hu's last name was Smith, I don't believe the Department of Justice would have brought this case. So we're fighting to make sure that we don't have racial profiling happening at the Department of Justice. Attorney General Garland has committed publicly that he's not going to have any racial profiling happening under his watch. We need to make sure to hold his feet to the fire and to ensure that we don't have continuing racial profiling by our own government. And I look forward to working with all of you and all the stakeholders as we continue to make America an even better place to live, work, and play, and to fight discrimination wherever it may exist.
Thanks, Congressman Liu. Some other members of Congress were trying to attend, but out of their very busy schedule, so hard to arrange. Congressman Jimmy Raskin, my congressman, also made a lot of efforts to help our community with these issues. I want to thank him today for that. And again, and there are many others who have done a lot. Congressman Ed Case from Honolulu also introduced some amendment before addressing the same concerns. That there are quite a few of them. What we will have next is well, I guess I can say the famed and the legendary Phil No Monaco. If you don't believe a defense lawyer can make a difference, just look at the Phil again. Phil, you have done so much, and we know that everybody is smart. When you look at everybody's being a lawyer, stand on the court, you can tell that your heart is in it, and we see that right away. And thank you for making the difference.
Well, thank you, Haipe. I don't want to take any credit for this because we were just doing our best, and we did a lot of praying during this trial. And I believe our prayers were answered. I just want to briefly say my impressions of what happened and how it happened. And it's hard to come up with a solution of what to do other than what everybody is doing, is raising the issue and pointing out the problems with the China Initiative. And I think that very phrase, China Initiative, is what drove our FBI agent in this case, and some of the other actors in the case, to go to the extent that they went to try to get a conviction on Ming, who their initiative means go after Chinese. It's a China Initiative. That means we go after Chinese, and that's where they were wrong to begin with. They should have gone after espionage wherever it was, and not focus on a race of people that are wonderful individuals, wonderful people in this world. And every race has the good and the bad, but in this particular case, I believe that the agent wanted to bring a case in the Eastern District of Tennessee, along with the U.S. attorneys here wanted to bring a case. And so it was easy to go after Chinese professors because they publish everything they do. And if you go to the University of Tennessee and look at the roster, you can pretty much tell by the names who might be of Asian descent. And then if you look at their publications, you can see what they have written. And then what our investigation agents tried to do is to extrapolate publications and simple innocent activity into some sort of crime. At first, they investigated for over a year and a half, following Professor Hu around without him knowing he was being followed. They didn't find anything. And then they started looking at UT's internal paperwork without Professor Hu knowing it, and saw that he had answered a question that they thought was a wrong answer, which we believe, and I think the judge acknowledged, was not a wrong answer. But the question was, do you have outside employment? But it was under a conflict of interest form, and it said, go to policy manual 5100 and to find instructions on how to fill out this conflict of interest form. And when you go there, it's pretty obvious that you have to have at least $10,000 or more a year income from a different source to be a conflict of interest. And Professor Hu did not have that kind of commitment with anybody else. So he didn't answer that he had that conflict of interest or have that outside interest, which was on it mostly on his part-time anyway. But the FBI took that and said, well, he lied. And why did he lie? Well, we have to find out why he lied. And then they looked at the kind of grants he was working on. In fact, he even told the agents a year and a half or 2 years prior to that, when they first came to interview him, that he was working on NASA grants. And so they went to NASA and they looked, and there's such a thing in NASA called a NASA restriction. And NASA restriction that Representative Wolf from Virginia put in the military appropriations bill back in 2011, I believe it was, a 180-page bill. He put in 2 paragraphs that said that NASA shall not collaborate bilaterally in its grants with China or Chinese corporations. So that was put into the NASA restrictions. They call that a NASA restriction. NASA was not to give grants to people that were either China or Chinese corporation or collaborated with China or Chinese corporations. And from there, they twisted the words around and said that, well, Professor Hu got a grant on behalf of UT, a NASA grant, and he's got a part-time job over in China. So he didn't collaborate with them, but he must be China or a Chinese corporation himself, which didn't make any sense. And the NASA restriction, we believe, was the first time this was interpreted by any court. And it just didn't make sense, but they used the language to say that he filled out improperly the paperwork to get a NASA grant. But the judge saw through that. First of all, Meng was charged with wire fraud, and we pointed out that we believe wire fraud requires some theft or some taking or injury to the victim. And we showed in court that NASA got everything they bargained for. In fact, they wanted Professor Hu to work on this project because he had the expertise and he had the skill that they were looking for. And they were satisfied with everything he did. So, no harm, no foul. And the judge talked about that being a defense. The judge also talked about the NASA restriction being so vague that there was no way that anybody could understand what kind of restriction or what kind of obligation you had based on the wording of the NASA restriction. And the University of Tennessee had very little training or education to try to explain to its professors what the NASA restriction meant. And in fact, in their applications, they put a phrase at the end of it, but we do not believe that the NASA restriction applies to UT faculty anyway. So the whole thing was ill-conceived on their part. And luckily, we had some jurors that did not just agree with the prosecution because the prosecution was bringing a case. And we had 2 people at least that would not change their mind and voted not guilty, and they hung the jury. And because we had filed a motion to dismiss based on vagueness and based on insufficient evidence of guilt, a Rule 29 motion, the judge did not rule on that pre-trial, did not rule on it during the trial, did not rule on it at the end of the trial, asked me if I wanted to renew it, and yes, I did. And then the jury came back with a hung verdict. And then a couple of weeks later, we asked the government if they were going to retry it. And the judge, by paperwork filed with the court, and the judge said, yeah, tell us if you're going to retry it. They said, yes, we're going to retry it. And then the judge ruled on our Rule 29. I think the judge didn't want to have to make a decision unless he had to, but in the end, to come up with justice in this case, he made a decision that there was not sufficient evidence of guilt that even a reasonable juror, any reasonable juror could find guilt in this case. So I guess the long and the short of it is that because the FBI was driven by this initiative, I think they went overboard and they pushed harder just to get a conviction rather than to do research that would require, that they do a reasonable assessment of the facts and not try to extrapolate the facts. And then the one other thing I wanted to point out is they actually put together PowerPoint presentations to the university administration on 3 separate months where they convinced the university that, had we known that he had filled out that or had that part-time job, we would not have allowed him to get a grant, which in my opinion, until the FBI told them they shouldn't think that way, they didn't think that way. So, we have to be vigilant and we have to look out for the rights of people, because when things get rolling and the initiatives get rolling, I think common sense and freedom and the presumption of innocence seems to go out the window. So we have to be vigilant and keep pushing back. And I'm just glad that I was part of a process that I think maybe with all the work of all of the organizations and the congressmen and everybody, the newspaper reporting, I think is making an impact. And now they're changing it. They're making sure that the universities explain what their professors have to do. They're making guidelines that are more clear so everybody knows what they have to do. And if somebody does something wrong, then they can't hide behind a vague statute anymore. And I'm not saying Professor Hu did anything wrong, because right from the beginning, I truly believed he was innocent. And I think that's what really made us work hard on the case. And I want to thank you all.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you so much. Just want to our audience know that if you have any questions, you can use the question and answer function of the Zoom. And if we have time, we will try to answer some of your questions after our reporters have the first shot. Next, we'll have Jimmy Centerfield, who reported the whole process of the trial. I think she's been sitting there every single day, and every one of us for a few days, or maybe more for a week, reading Knoxville news as if it is much more important than New York Times, which to me for that week it is. And every single day we read the report from the trench by Jimmy. I think her report made a difference. Again, as I want to say that I'm very grateful over the last 6 years, ever since the breakout of Sherry Chen's story, that our media has done amazing work, put their mind, put their analysis, and listen to everybody, not just the government, and that has made a difference. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me. I will say that my impression from listening to the evidence as it unfolded in Dr. Hu's trial was that you had an agent He wanted to make a name for himself under the Trump administration and using this China Initiative. And it's clear that all he really did was Google around with some Chinese professors' names until he found some mention of Dr. Hu and the Beijing University. Dr. Hu, in every study and research paper that he produced, he was always, it seemed to me, the evidence was that he was very clear that he had some collaboration on various projects with members of Beijing University, where he had a part-time job, as Phil said. The thing that troubled me about this right away was testimony that the agent himself met with Dr. Hu and told Dr. Hu that he did not believe that Dr. Hu was a spy or involved in espionage. And it was only after Dr. Hu refused to become an operative for the government that this agent then began stalking this man, stalking his son, who was a University of Tennessee student. And essentially what the FBI and the Department of Justice did was roll over the University of Tennessee, and they very willingly threw Dr. Hu under the bus. I've said this many times, but it's just the truth, because the testimony was clear that Dr. Hu had been advised, as all faculty were, that this NASA restriction did not apply, that the university did not believe it applied to faculty members. Dr. Hu filled out his forms as he was instructed to do. The University of Tennessee had no problem with using Dr. Hu, because believe me, when you have somebody of Dr. Hu's caliber, and you've got agencies like NASA that want this man's intelligence and his technology, all the things that he has done, he was of great value to the University of Tennessee, and they were the ones that were benefiting. Dr. Hu didn't get any money out of this. There were 2 NASA grants, as I recall, and the money goes to the university. NASA got what it asked for, and I believe that although the greater issue of this initiative is to me absolutely profiling. If they had a white woman's initiative, I might be on the target list, right? But in this particular case, I think this agent's ego came to bear. It is unfortunate that the U.S. attorney at that time, who was a Trump appointee, allowed this case to go forward. They could have shut that down. And it was very significant that he was not charged with anything related to espionage. But when they put out a press release about it, you certainly thought he was a spy. And the University of Tennessee immediately puts out a press release throwing him under the bus. We're getting rid of him. We had no idea. The man did nothing wrong, nothing. Now, you could argue that perhaps the judge could have stopped this in the beginning, but I do respect Judge Tom Varlin. As I've said before, he wanted to make sure that the media and in particular me, because of the skill set I have, that we were aware of it and that we covered it. And you know, I was concerned, even though it was clear to me that this case shouldn't even reach a jury. There wasn't even enough proof to reach a jury. I was concerned that in East Tennessee, my home, that prejudice might prevail on that jury. And so I noticed Wendy Chandler, one of the jurors who voted not guilty, is on this panel. And those 2 folks who voted not guilty and stood by their guns, you know, they deserve some credit here as well. But Judge Varlin did allow the process to work. And one thing I want to note is that there was another case, a very high profile case involving Pilot, the truck stops, the Haslam family. Bill Haslam was a governor of Tennessee at one time. Big Jim Haslam, as I say, big UT supporter, very wealthy family. And the president of Pilot was convicted of defrauding customers and intimidating a witness. And that case got overturned on a technicality, truly, on something that the judge had did that really had no impact. And it should have been a given that the Department of Justice would have retried that man, Mark Hazelwood, but they did not. They said they just didn't want it. It was too much expense. And so they let that guy go. But yet within weeks, we're going to retry Dr. Who. And so thank God that Judge Farland did step in and rule appropriately based on the lack of evidence. And the final thing I'll say is I know the burden that lawyers carry when they believe they have an innocent client. And so thank goodness for Phil Lamonaco and his staff. They well represented Dr. Who. But you know, the saddest thing to me, and I think about his family, his reputation was ruined. He lost his job. I can't imagine how scared his wife was when he was in jail. And you know, if you Google him now, you're very subject to getting some old story that suggests he's a spy. So I don't know how he ever gets out from under that. So these sorts of things have to end. Surely the Department of Justice can catch spies, true spies, without painting some kind of brush over an entire population of people. Without people like Dr. Who, certainly we would not have some of the technology and the know-how that America enjoys today. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you, Haipe and the organizations. I'm so glad that you all are speaking out and that your Congress folks are working hard to make sure that these types of things do not happen again in America. This is wrong.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Thank you. Next, we will have Wendy Chandler. We never met before. This is the first time over the Zoom. We all have Americans like to say that one man can make a difference. And that's just another case where it is. I told Jimmy, Phil, and Wendy that it is for people like the three of you that more than 30 years ago, I emigrated to this country. And you are the American and America that I signed up for. I cannot say, there's not much more I can say. That's exactly in my mind. So we have Wendy. Is Wendy there?
Okay, Wendy, I think, has some issues. Oh, she's back now.
Okay. I didn't see Wendy. Is she back? Hey, Wendy, can you hear this, or can you show your video? Yeah. You probably need to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I lost connection for a minute there. I'm Wendy Chandler. I was a juror on the An Ming Hu trial. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. Although I'm extremely nervous and feel completely unqualified to be here amongst all of you, I wanted to be of service the best I can. During the trial, it was clear to me that the overwhelming desire to believe the FBI blurred all sense of rationale and reason. When it was finally over, I was horrified by what I saw, and I wanted to tell as many people that would listen about what the FBI had done to this innocent man. I kept wondering, why are these seemingly highly qualified FBI agents, under the guise of protecting America, felt that this trial was worth going ahead with. I believe the China Initiative lost credibility with the An Minghu trial. They know they lied. They know they spent countless hours, time, and money on trying to prove their lie, and they nearly were successful. When the government starts throwing away facts and integrity instead of and acts with malicious intent, we are all less safe. The China Initiative has proved itself to be a huge error in judgment, and it would be nice to see some kind of apology to Professor Hu from the FBI and from the University of Tennessee. As an institution, it's very surprising to me that the university hasn't initiated some kind of lessons learned plan of action. It seems very inappropriate that they would just carry on as though they didn't plan all of us to speak up when we see injustices, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. I hope the people who did this to Professor Hu are held accountable and at the very least learn from their role and do their best to make sure it doesn't happen again. Again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Really appreciate that. Next, we will have Professor Dr. An Minghu say a few words. Thank you, Amy. Yeah.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to join this press conference. Also, good morning to Dr. Wong. Thanks to the UCA to give me this chance to share my story and speak to the press. So I'm the Chinese Canadian scientist in nanotechnology. After I get my 2 PhD in physics, I moved to US from Canada in 2013 and become the professor at the University Tennessee, Knoxville. Instead of working to advance scientific research, I was left to fight for my innocence against this non-justice prosecution that destroyed my career and ruined my life and also lives in my family. I, like many other scientists of Asian descent, are maliciously surveilled and wrongfully prosecuted under this China Initiative of the Department of Justice. I'm the victim of a China Initiative. Even today, I cannot resume my university job because I have lost my employment eligibility in US due to this wrongfully prosecution. Let me very brief talk about the wrongfully prosecution against me. So when the FBI agent arrested me, I even don't know why. They told me I was charged by the wire fraud and false statement. But I thought that this must be a serious mistake. Within the same day, I was put on jail. So government charged me with the wire fraud because the accusation that I failed to disclose my affiliation with the Chinese university on the university form connected with my research grant from NASA. In fact, this disclosed form was not part of the grant application. It is for the faculty annual review. Despite my adherence to our university disclosure policy, as Phil Lamonaco explained clearly, I still was charged with federal crime and was placed under the house arrested, separated from my family. In June 2021, my case went to the trial and resulted in the mistrial after the juror deadlock when the concerning of the FBI misconduct came to the light. Despite the outcry from the Asian American community and concern raised by the several members of the Congress and also civil rights groups, the government still want to retry the case. Fortunately, in September, I was acquitted of all the charge by the federal judge after he carefully checked the evidence we presented during the trial. He ruled the evidence was not for a juror to convict me on any of the charge brought against me. But it is very crucial to highlight the racial profiling in my case. Although I was acquitted, the main point here is that what happened to me is part of the broad pattern of the racial targeting and profiling of scientists and research of Asian descent who face mass investigation, surveillance, and criminal prosecution for similar charges. Serious concern of the alert the FBI misconduct has surfaced in the China Initiative. The other case include mine. An FBI agent started my case by Google search my summer seminar in China on the website and translate the Chinese material with the Google translation. Prior to my arrest, FBI conducted the undercover surveillance and followed me for over a year and a half in an effort to catch spy. They even surveilled my college student son. They didn't find any evidence of economy espionage or any other criminal activity, but they still prosecute me. So I cannot forget the great pain caused by this unjust prosecution. Prior to my arrest, I have hoped to become the US citizen and waiting for the green card in America. I love my job as a university professor, which allowed me to share my knowledge with students and while working on the research. Within hours of my arrest, I have lost the career I built all my life. The university suspended me without pay and later terminated my tenureship. Overnight, I lost my job, my research, and also my student. So after being under the house arrested, I struggle with my physical and mental health. I have the type 2 diabetes and need regular medical care. But for a long time, I'm not allowed to see a doctor or even go to the deck of my own house to get fresh air. I was treated like the prisoner, and my house is like the jail cell. Lost my job and being separated from my family significantly affected my mental health. I become depressed and often question my decision to leave Canada and move to US and devote my life to the research in this country. It was a very dark time of my life. But I refused to give up. I was committed to fight against this injustice and fight for my innocence. I was very respectful to the independent US law system, which stick on the justice and fairness, and I have a chance to be acquitted. After my acquittal until now, I'm still trying to pick up the piece of my life and restore my reputation that has been shattered by this prosecution. I was very grateful to the overwhelming support I received from members of Congress, journalists, community organizations, civil rights groups, professors and faculty organizations, including my colleagues at the UTK, who are support my reinstatement. Move forward, I hope to continue my work as a scientist and educator in this country, which I already attribute to. I'm waiting for the US Civil and Immigration Service to prove my employment eligibility. Asian American scientists and professors has significantly contributed to the leadership of the US in science and technology, wrongfully targeting those talented Chinese and Asian Americans will not make the United States strong. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you so much, Professor Hu, and thank you for insisting on going through the trial at a huge risk to you, your family. I'm aware there's several others who just couldn't do it and have to make some other arrangement with the government. And we all know what kind of emotional financial costs it take on a family. So, and in your case, you have great friends, great lawyers. Count yourself as one of the blessed ones. Thanks. So next we will have Dr. Wong Chang, who used to be a research professor at the leading Cleveland clinic and had many breakthrough research. And he was charged, and later on, after long periods, all the money spent, the government dropped the charges. And yes, government will never say apologize. And he now has to be, this is really the land that break his heart, and he went back to China. I'll let Dr. Wang speak about his story. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Pei, for invitation to participate in this very important event. Similar to Amin Hu, I'm also a victim of this China Initiative. I think the China Initiative is really a politically motivated witch hunt movement. It is a racial profiling plan and purely political. It discriminates against China-born scientists, and it's deliberate harassment and political assassination of China-born scientists. It is wrong to use national security as an excuse to prosecute scientists like us who work on basic science, and all our work is published in the public domains. So I think the China Initiative should be stopped immediately to prevent it from hurting more highly talented scientists. I suffered tremendously from the China Initiative. My family suffered tremendously. It has damaged my scientific reputation. It also has caused much economic distress and also psychological sufferings to me and my family members. I was greatly relieved when the case was dismissed. I did nothing wrong. The justice eventually prevailed. I was treated unfairly by Cleveland Clinic and by the US government agencies. They should apologize to me for their wrongdoings. Well, they wanted to destroy my scientific career, and I will stay on. I think they will fail. I have moved to China. I was forced to move to China. I think I will try to build my career in China. I will be successful here, and I will try to continue to make breakthrough discoveries in cardiovascular diseases and neurological diseases that benefit the entire world, that benefit humanity. I will make these discoveries without fear of political persecution by the US grant agencies and FBI and other government agencies. Thank you all. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this event. Pei, that's it.
I think Happy is tied up with something probably.
Okay. Sorry about that. Next, thank Dr. Chang, Wong Chang. And just one more time, you are like a 3 o'clock in the morning there, maybe 4 o'clock now. So we apologize. We're gonna find a better time. This is the best time we have. The last we will have for today is a dear friend, Ms. Hong Pen, whose husband was charged in the China Initiative. Ms. Peng has done amazing thing, emotionally and financially, working multiple jobs just to make sure that they have her husband has enough resources and emotional support to go through this very, very, very tough family time. Home, please.
Okay. Thank you, Haipei. Thank you for having me here. My name is Hong Pen. I'm Franklin Tao's wife and the mother of our 2 children. My husband, Franklin Tao, was an outstanding professor at the University of Kansas
everyone is a busy schedule, and I think
until his arrest in 2019. He was by far the most productive professor at the Department of Chemical and Petroleum Engineering. He was one of the 26 professors in the department, but he contributed about 25% of publications in his department in the period 2015 to 2019. He published an average of 20 papers a year. Franklin was the first professor arrested under the DOJ China Initiative. Yet, he is not alleged to have stolen any intellectual property or trade secrets. He is not alleged to have improperly shared anything with anyone in China or with the Chinese government. He is not alleged to be involved in espionage. Instead, his alleged crime is he improperly filled out his conflict of interest forms that he submitted to the Human Resource Department at University of Kansas. For that, he was charged with 10 felonies and faces the possibility of decades in prison. 20 years ago, my husband came to the USA with the dream of being an American scientist. He started his study as a PhD candidate at Princeton University. For the past 20 years, he fully devoted himself to science. He has worked 16 hours a day to fulfill his dream of being an American scientist. Now his career and life have been destroyed by the unjust prosecution. In the last 2.5 years, our family had been living in a nightmare full of fear and desperation. Our children were severely traumatized by the FBI agent coming to the house and arresting their father. They often cry in the room and need help from the counselors, and one had to see psychologists routinely after all this happened. My heart is broken for our children, and I deeply worried about the long-term harm to them. My husband's life and career have been destroyed by the China Initiative. The prosecution has seriously impacted Franklin's mental health. He has become extremely depressed and has trouble sleeping and eating. But even as he has struggled with his health issues, he has voluntarily worked from home without payment and published 11 academic articles in the past 2 years. Due to this prosecution, my husband lost his career and even medical insurance. I have worked as a frontline worker in 3 hospitals to help our family to survive. Due to the expensive legal defense, we have huge debt and will likely lose our home. I'm here to request the DOJ to end the China Initiative and drop my husband's case. The DOJ China Initiative takes advantage of the vagueness of disclosure obligations to punish Chinese American professors with criminal prosecutions for the same conduct, which previously went unpunished or was handled administratively by their universities or funding agencies. Every day, U.S. scientists collaborate with scientists from all over the world. There are dozens of recruiting programs in other countries, but the DOJ only cares about China. I believe my husband and the other professors charged as part of the China Initiative are the victims of selective prosecution and racial profiling. This must stop. Recently, the Office of Science and Technology Policies acknowledged the disclosure policies of funding agencies are vague and poorly understood by both professors and their universities. It published guidance to create a universal disclosure requirement and form. Although this change is welcomed, it comes too late to help my husband. That is why I'm asking for the DOJ to do the right thing by dismissing the case against my husband, Franklin Tao. Thank you for listening to me. May God bless America.
Thank you, Ms. Peng, for your heartbreaking story. What your family have suffered through is exactly what get me up every day. So this is now we can open up to our people in the media and reporter. If you this is your time, you can ask any question to any of you. Just let us know your name. That's it. Again, our witness and our speakers are done. 7 or 8 of them here. We open this time up for you if you have any questions, either for one person or a question at all of us. That will be appreciated. And one more thing that you can contact us if after this event is over, you have any request to have a chance to communicate with any of our speakers here. We will help to put you together so that you can know more about what's going on. Do we have any questions from the audience? The question and answer.
Yeah, there is a question. Why is it so difficult for DOJ, the government, to address the issues appeared in the China Initiative? Is it U.S. government being the government of the people, by the people, for the people?
I don't know which question is that. Question 4. Probably our member of Congress should be the best person to answer them. But any of you want to take a shot at that questions? Why it is so difficult for our government, and in this case DOJ, to change or to change their tactics? If not, I'll just say very quickly that I do think that number one, lack of understanding of Asian American community has made a lot of government decisions less than equal and less than correct. And tend to put some suspicions on people who are not growing up in this country. So when we talk about stop racial profiling of Chinese Americans, it's not just it is not just racial profiling. It's actually also profiling of country of origins. And these are beyond the race even. It's a country specific. And so I think one big part is that the U.S.-China relation has gone so bad, and it could still going even worse. And because of that, because of the quote unquote national security concerns, our government is very slow to answer to the demands. But I do see very hopeful sign. I think that Department of Justice is in a process of reconsidering different aspects of China Initiative, and we fully look forward to any reform or revamping or discarding of China Initiative pretty soon. Yes, I do think that this is compared with my own experience growing up in China. This is American democracy at its best. Although maybe I have said this a few days too early or too soon, but I think it's coming. And if that happens, it is because the democratic pressure from everybody, civil rights organizations, reporters, media, ethnic communities, member of Congress. It's just unbelievable. Even many federal prosecutors have great concerns about this program. And in fact, more than one original architects of China Initiative, once they left the government job, they wrote it that say, hey, we along the way we lost focus, we messed up. These are the, as far as I know, two original architects of China Initiative said that. So so we know that the pressure is on, and there is a strong desire to turn that around at our Justice Department at this point. Thanks.
There's a question for Professor Hu. What excuse UT gave you for not restating your job?
Can you say that question again?
What excuse UT gave you for not restating your job?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So in fact, after my case was dismissed, so there are several organizations pushed the UT to reinstate me, and especially the UT Faculty Senate, they worked pretty hard. Most people I don't know. Those colleagues, I really appreciate. UT, I lost the eligibility, employment and eligibility because I was arrested, and then under the house arrested, and during the long term, the case pending, and USCIS closed my immigration application. So I'm lucky. I mean, the congressman still support me. So recently, the USCIS is reactive my case, but still they're not yet approved. I hope the USCIS can prove my case, showing. In that case, I can back to the UT campus and resume my operation. Yeah, thanks for your question.
Next question is for Haipei. Do you have any plans to continue to protest China Initiative or to take other steps to pressure DOJ to change its approach?
Thanks, Jeffrey, for the question. As I said, in fact, this morning, just 1 hour before we started this event, local Chinese community members gathered outside of a Department of Justice and had a protest there. They asked the government to stop prosecuting Chinese American scientists just because of some paperwork inconsistencies or what is generally called research integrity issues. Those issues can be left to the funding agencies and can be left to the university to deal with. And there's really no reason at all that DOJ should continue to pursue that route as they have been doing in the last 3 years. I'm pretty sure that more organizations at this point are going to take doing their own way to make sure that our government has heard us, which they did. And I do think that there's some positive sign, or very positive sign, that the government is reconsidering the direction and the priority and tactics of China Initiative. As Congresswoman Chu said today, and I guess it's no secret now, that Assistant Attorney General Matt Olson, who is in charge of China Initiative, he is requesting a meeting with our KPAC members. Again, those are the members, congressional members of Asian American Pacific descent. And I'm fully expecting something happen next week. I just sense that I know that the DOJ has done some listening and communications with outside groups, and now to our member of Congress. These are all good signs in the right directions. And rest assured that we will continue to work to make sure that China Initiative, whether there will be a called China Initiative or not, will be directed its resources at what it should do, and catch spies and stop illegal technology transfer, and not planting fears among the Chinese American scientist community who made a tremendous contribution to this country. I'm aware that some recent studies said that 1/3 of the research on artificial intelligence in this country is done by Chinese American scientists, while our population in this country is only 1.5%. So instead of really, I think our government should give a gold medal to the Chinese American scientists who worked the hardest, and look at how many papers that they have published every single day in a world-renowned journals. They did all this integrating, hardworking research day and out in the lab, as our two speakers here has amply represented. Without them, this country's technology lead and leadership will be very different. So that's the message I want to have to our government, and will absolutely continue to pursue until the DOJ has changed the China Initiative.
Okay. Happy, can we address more questions or?
Well, if there's anybody, especially our reporters here, can want to have a question, this is the last chance. Other than that, we're going to stop in from here. And once again, if you do have any needs and interest to contact any of our speakers today, let me know. We will help connect. Thank you very much. This event is ended now. We thank you very much for all the speakers and our reporter friends, and we thank Chi Hong and Yuan Wen, whose technical support made this possible. And also thanks to our member of Congress. Again, there are several more who would like to join us, but they are busy with some other stuff. They wrote me separately and expressed their sorry they couldn't make it. Again, this is for the history. This is not just one incident. This is about what American we are looking forward to. And this is about our democracy. So I really feel very grateful to have known all of you, and I'm grateful that UCA has been fortunate to work with many victims of China Initiative. And in fact, even before China Initiative, as we said earlier today, starting from Wenho Li in more than 20 years ago, and more than 60 years ago from Sherry Chen, who is still today fighting for her civil rights after being acquitted. The government never apologized. Xiaoxing Xi, another famed victim of not China Initiative, but our government overzealous and selective prosecution. It's really, if you get to know the stories of all these families, it's break your heart. I have heard too many of these stories. I don't want to hear any more. And I want DOJ to stop prosecuting Chinese American scientists just because some allegedly paperwork errors or research integrity issues. We are better than that. We're Americans, and we come to this country for the rule of law, for the respect of human and civil rights, and to do nothing but do research. So please let the Chinese American scientists go back to do their research. That is what they are good at. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Hebe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone.
Thank you.